Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 93, Birnbaum Guides. We'll be taking you back to the wonderful world of Steve Birnbaum and his guidebooks that I know almost all of our listeners have pored over for years and probably still go back and look at and read. It's a retro trip in itself. So we'll get on to that in a little bit. And sitting in with me, as always, is Mr. JT Kuzier. How you doing tonight, JT?
I am great. I'm excited to talk Birnbaums. This is like the early days of park research.
That's right.
Going to the library, grabbing these things, and we're gonna talk about our own Birnbaum experiences.
You know, it's funny you say library. I have one here that has thrift books on it. Can you imagine borrowing this, taking it all the way to Florida on your trip in your 2 weeks that you had the book?
I used to.
You would take it down?
I would go to our local library,
yeah.
And I was known to like go and find like 10 books. I probably read half of one of them, but you'd search for Disney World.
Oh yeah,
and it was always the travel guides, and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to get this. And
yeah.
I'll never forget one year I got one. I don't remember what year, it was 90s, and they were always talking about this trail at Fort Wilderness, like a wilderness marsh trail, and I was always like, where is this? And I'd take my Birnbaums, and it was like a paragraph. There was no picture.
Yeah,
and I remember like taking the book with me, being like, can you tell me where this is? Like, yeah, that's long gone. That's not a thing anymore.
JT's got like the old edition from the library. But we got a lot to talk about this tonight, so which is great. And coming into us from Philadelphia, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How are you tonight, Brian?
Greetings, salutations, happy fall, even though I hate fall, it's fall. We got the first really crispy day out there today. When I walked out of the house in my golf shirt, I turned around and came in and put on a long sleeve shirt before I left for work. So
the crispy. Changing of the guards, as
yeah.
Yeah. It's getting nippy here. We had a wonderful weekend. It was beautiful this past weekend here.
We've had some great weekends.
Yeah. Speaking of weather, Hal Bowers is not going to be joining us on this episode. We hope to have a little hello from him recording.
Hey guys, it's Hal calling in from the road. We are in Winter Haven, Florida, having escaped Milton, and now on our way back to home to pick up with the rebuild process after getting flooded out. I hope you guys have a great show tonight. Sorry I couldn't be there, in person as usual, to help out. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who supported me through my TeePublic store or sent just thoughts and wishes and prayers of support during this. You just don't know what it's going to be like when suddenly your entire life gets turned upside down. And I'm one of thousands and thousands of people that this has happened to between Helene and Milton and just life in general, the things that have happened to everybody. So I'm just grateful for all the good wishes and thanks, and I just can't say enough about everybody who's kept up with me and looked to make sure that myself and my family are good. And from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate that to everyone. So hope to see you all soon. Have a great show tonight. Love you all.
He and his family are safely away from the Hurricane Milton that recently hit their area and has been recovering from some of the damages of Helene that came through his area and interrupted their lives and their home. So as well, we wish him well, and hopefully he'll be back on the next episode. So Hal, we miss you, brother, and we'll definitely see you soon. JT, let's reach into that mailbag and
Sure.
See what we got.
Okay, first one I have here is Scott Dieter. He says, "Hi guys, I've been listening to the latest episode, and he's on the part of the Cal Can contests. This is from back in August. Scott wrote us. We've had a couple episodes since then. He's only about 85% sure of this info, but as his cast member days get further and further in the past, he believes the way it worked was the kennels at the TTC and Epcot were day stays only, not overnights. So if you're going to Magic Kingdom and, you know, your service peacock in the day wasn't something they let you take into the park.
I caught it outside at the treehouse, just so you know. I walked up to the treehouse, I grabbed it and brought it over to the Magic Kingdom.
You had to stow it back in these days. You couldn't take it into the park. That was where you'd take it. Now, the one at Fort Wilderness was the only place you could board your pet overnight. He says, and he doesn't think you necessarily had to be staying at the fort just on property. And I do remember that. Like, you'd see that building, and we never had dogs and cats and any of that stuff, but I'd be like, what is that over there? My parents would always say, that's the kennel where people leave their dogs. So I never knew it was more than just, you know, Fort Wilderness.
I'm flipping through this book here called Steve Birnbaum's Guide.
I'll let you go.
Let me do this while you work on the other ones. And I'm trying to find the index. Did I lose pages in this? I thought he always had an index. But anyway, you go for that. I'm going to look for the pet information, and let's see if
all right, you find that. Mr. So Dieter. He says he used the ones at the TTC and Epcot once in 2003 while Scott was living in Savannah. He's never used the one at the fort, although I found mentions of people leaving their pets there overnight on several message boards like the Diz and TripAdvisor. So he hopes that helps. But it's comical because we do this podcast. We're on a remote Zoom, and I see my two co-hosts just leafing through Birnbaum's, both of them. It's very on brand, which I wish I was here because I'd say make a shirt of Birnbaum's.
There's going to be so much flipping tonight and so many fun things and anecdotes in these books. I'm bursting with things to tell you guys.
I haven't found the kennel yet in my 1983 edition, but I did find plant sitting.
Oh,
where was plant sitting done at?
Plants do not fare well in the heat of a closed-up car for the day. Those who have purchased greenery at Walt Disney World Shopping Village or bought a favorite fern from home, because who doesn't travel with their fern,
I put
will be
googly eyes
grateful
on
to
them.
know that the horticultural wonders can be accommodated by the kennels at Fort Wilderness or at the Transportation and Ticket Center for no charge.
I was going to say, no charge. You don't have to. What about if you
charge,
wanted Miracle Grow?
What if?
I'll bet you there was just a shelf or two, and then if you read that, you could just set it there, and maybe they'd add a little water throughout the day.
I did find the pet section.
Oh, you found it? Okay. All right. What do you got?
In the pet section, it's in the transportation, how do you get there section, by the way,
really?
Todd. It's at the very back of that. But no pets are allowed in the Magic Kingdom or at Walt Disney World Resorts. Travelers who bring a pet can lodge it in one of two attractive air-conditioned kennels. The Walt Disney World Kennel Club is next to the Transportation and Ticket Center, and the Fort Wilderness Kennel and Livery at the campground entrance next to a huge field where pet owners often take their animals out for a run. In the busy season, try to arrive before the 9 to 10 a.m. morning rush hour, and note that the Kennel Club closes an hour after the Magic Kingdom. Bears, cougars, and ocelots have all been accommodated by the WDW Kennels, and exotic pets are accepted, if a bit reluctantly. However, owners themselves must put the more unusual animals into the kennels' cages, and snakes, rabbits, birds, turtles, hamsters, and other animals unsuited because of size to cat and dog sized cages must be accommodated by their own escape-proof accommodations.
Wait a second.
Advanced reservations are not accepted. Resort guests may board their pet in either kennel. Guests at Walt Disney World Village Hotel Plaza establishments may board their animals in the Kennel Club. Pets of day guests may not remain overnight. So if you were just a day guest, you couldn't, but a resort guest could.
No, I was following along with you, Brian. In 1986, Birnbaum says that they may board their pets overnight at either the TTC or Fort Wilderness Kennels.
Now that might have been, was it still was it still Calcan then?
That's a good question.
Because I don't see Calcan mentioned here either, but we know that sponsorship ran out. Cost is $3 for overnight stays, not including food, $2 for a day stay. Never leave pets in a car, and bring along your pet's certificate of vaccination, since Florida law requires proof of immunization for animals involved in biting incidents.
In 86, it went up to $6 and $4 a day. So there you have
There
it.
is no way you can bring your own cougar on a leash into Fort Wilderness, bring it in there into the cat or dog sized cage.
What about the bear? Bears, cougars, and ocelots.
A bear?
I mean, if it's a baby bear, they're cute.
I mean, they are, but all right.
I mean, even big bears are cute until they try to eat you.
Now,
there has to be somebody out there, an ex-cast member, who knows the story of something coming in, like a cougar or a bear. I would love to hear about this.
This is amazing. The funny thing is you could buy a plant that wouldn't do well, but if I bought a candle, they wouldn't walk over that. Because remember the candle place? And the candle place would was interesting. You could buy candles, but they just melt in the Florida heat too.
Well, apparently they'll watch your rattlesnake too in the proper container if you.
Well, I
bring
put the
it
candle
there.
in with the rattlesnake and bring it to the kennel. That
and going off of Birnbaum, they did say smoking items are widely available all over Walt Disney World, so you can drop off your cougar and smoke your cigs just about anywhere you want.
There is a whole cigarette section here.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! All right, well.
All right, we'll get into it here.
Everything,
We're going.
it's all going to happen. It's all.
That's the answer, Scott. Though
there you go.
Day guest had to pick their pets up at the end of the day, but
I can't wait to talk about the physical print of this book too. Hal's not here; he would explain things, but I'm interested to talk about that too. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
All right, next up, thanks, Scott. John Kunzer, he says, "Hi, gents. I'm catching up on podcasts, and he's enjoyed reminiscing about the early days of Disney and home computing. He started with a TRS-80 in the late 70s and graduated to a Macintosh by the late 80s. With respect to screensavers we spoke on, he really enjoyed the Disney After Dark edition from the early 90s. Yes. Does anyone else remember this? Regards, Johnny. He did give us a YouTube link here.
Absolutely. I forgot about that, though. So After Dark, for those of you younger sets...
Flying Toasters.
Flying Toasters was it. The coolest thing in the early 90s, late 80s was to have a screensaver. Earlier CRTs or cathode ray tubes, not what your flat screens are today.
Tube TVs.
Tube TVs, yeah. They were prone to burn in, but it had become more of a, you really had to have your computer on for hours and hours and hours and weeks and months and months. And anyway, screensavers became a thing because, if you don't want your screen on the same thing, what would you do? You'd buy something that piece of software that would have the same thing, and there was aquariums, and there was the biggest thing was After Dark was the name of the screensaver, and
Starfield was a big one. Looked like you were like in the Millennium Falcon flying through the stars, like the stars would come at you as you were flying,
and then you could configure what you wanted. I'm looking through this one here. Donald Duck would paint things. The irony of screensavers is that they were meant to not burn things onto your screen, and they actually just wound up putting the same images over and over. But the idea was that you wouldn't have like your icons over. Right. There was so the Disney one had fireworks, had Pinocchio, had Scrooge McDuck flying through oodles of money, Sorcerer's Apprentice, The Little Mermaid. I can't remember if there was a Flying Toasters area or something similar. And Goofy, of course, what would he do? Oh, he'd pick out your desktop items and move them around. And there was
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He'd like push your icons or fake icons around and look like he was, cleaning it up or goofing around. So.
And of course, this was bought in a 12-inch cardboard box at the store and installed and everything. Which
it was probably, in 91, it wasn't a big program. It could have come on a 3.5-inch floppy, but probably by 91 it might have been on a CD-ROM. Although at 91, no, it's definitely floppy. Probably multiple floppies because I remember in college, 92, a friend of mine got a CD-ROM drive. And I actually borrowed it, took it out of his computer, borrowed it, installed it in mine, and I was amazed at the encyclopedia that he got and had these videos that. By today, they'd be the size of half a postage stamp. And, my jaw was on the floor. Like, I'm playing a video off of this rainbow disc from my computer. I found
Look
a
at that.
picture of that computer the other day, gentlemen. I'll have to share it with you because it's...
Look at that bald
quite
eagle
the
grab
beast.
that fish as I watched it on my... That was always the one.
Yeah. It was a rocket launch, I remember, and the countdown guy is not too... he's just like, 3, 2, 1... like unsure if the rocket's going to even lift off. So, but
yeah, great,
what a great memory. Great.
Wow. Solid piece of software. It's on YouTube. We'll link it in the show notes. You'll be able to click it and relive this. And if you're like, you take this old stuff, this vintagey, now 91. That doesn't seem that long ago, but it kind of is. We have the Amazon product that's like the screen on our wall in our kitchen, and it controls the house. It does stuff. And I will open up something like this Disney After Dark on the YouTube app on there, and then I have the screensaver playing in our kitchen on the screen. It's like a step back in time, but not. So you could do that as well with the link in the show notes. All right. Well, thank you very much, Johnny. That's very fun. Okay, next up, Dane, our old friend Dane here. Just heard my story pop up on the podcast, so I couldn't resist dropping a line. Brian, thanks for that. A few random things. This is kind of the contest episode. Canadian contest required skill testing questions.
Yes, I remember reading that. That was in our 1 or 2 episodes ago, right?
Yeah, Dane's understanding is that it's due to our lotteries being run by the government and the fact it's illegal to run an unofficial lottery. So contests can't give away stuff for nothing, as in they need to add an element of skill into the mix for you to actually get the prize. And he did give us an article about that, so we could put that in the show notes.
Okay.
He says, after he won, my dad and was told he'd have to do one of the above mathematical skill testing questions. They called with the question and told him they'd call back in 20 minutes. So time to study. Although they'd recently bought me a calculator, it was 1976 and he'd never used one. So he did his question longhand. He still has it and the image is attached. He's got literally he sent us the picture of the math equation, which it's, it looks like 26 or 96, maybe 26 times 15. That's the question. But then there's a lot going on here.
Feats of skill.
Yes. He says, our contest was just like the other subscription ones you talked about. Ours was from a company called Leisure Books, and they were promoting their Wildlife Treasury subscription. At 8 years old, I had this idea that we'd have more chances of winning if we bought the cards enough, though officially it's a no purchase necessary rule here. I convinced my parents if it would be super educational for me, so they ordered the cards and entered the contest. He found an old image of the card collection online. It's basically one of those, like, you get the plastic case. And you line up they send you 10 cards a month or whatever.
Yep.
As Brian said, it was for 2 weeks at the Contemporary. Our hotel invoice has nightly rate as $60, which translates to $311 in today's dollars, so over $4,000 in total in hotel stays. The trip also included first-class airfare from Winnipeg to Orlando via Chicago on Eastern, and they got $1,000 in spending money. That is $5,184 today.
Winnipeg may be the only place you could fly to Chicago from in the winter and get out in Chicago and go, oh boy, it's nice here.
Take my jacket off.
That's right.
Okay, meals and tickets.
Yeah.
They were included. And the memory I have is that rather than send us ticket booklets for the Magic Kingdom, they decided to give my parents extra money, as somehow that was easier for the company to do, which makes sense, I guess. The reason I remember that is because for months afterwards, I heard my parents tell friends that they weren't able to spend all the money they received, so they used the remaining prize money to get new furniture for the living room when they got home. That's amazing. And finally here, we learned we'd won in late June of 76, but our man at Leisure told my parents summers in Florida weren't that pleasant, so if at all possible, we should wait till spring. My parents took the advice, and we flew down March 18th, 1977. From what I remember, it was utterly perfect weather for the whole 2 weeks. And the rest is history. It was a vacation of a lifetime. He says, as amazing it was for me, I now realize it must have been equally wonderful for my parents. Only 4 years into our new lives in Canada, it was early days for them, so a deluxe trip like this must have been pretty incredible. 2 weeks off work, no chores, sunshine, beaches, restaurants, food. And they went to side trips to Cape Kennedy, SeaWorld, and Lake Buena Vista.
Wow,
So
nice.
very cool to hear how that worked out. Dane, we like hearing the winner stories because you never seems like more people lost than won. So
That's right. If you lost out there, please write in about how you felt and what you did that day, and then any negative things that came out of your losses. So, but
Brian, this one's for you. You actually replied. This is from Franklin Jennings. He says, the Taiko drummers, how long have they been performing, and what's their story?
I don't know their story. I was counting on How to give us all that.
well, hold on. We got. See if the Taiko drummers are in the first edition right there, Brian. They're Birnbaums.
Hold on a second.
All right, so we kind of have an answer to that. Well, an answer, at least we know, thanks to Birnbaum Guides, when at least the earliest one. Now, we don't have a complete collection here. Brian looked at the 83, the first time Epcot opened. JT checked 86, and then you found it in, what was it, 89?
89, you found it first, yeah.
Oh, I found it in 89, and JT, you also found it in the 90s.
95.
95, and they went through some name changes as well. So we're going to have to get back on a little more information. They weren't called the Taiko Drummers back then, too. They went by a couple different names. So I think we've got a little bit of a mystery to solve there on that one. But thank you, Birnbaum, for a quick answer here in the moment.
All right. Well, that is appreciate that question there. And finally, now this is, I'm just going to say, I dug into the mailbag for this last one.
Okay.
This is from 2021.
Whoa.
This is from
you
Andy,
reached down
Andy Hudson.
deep.
I went deep. Andy Hudson. He says, hey, guys. I recently purchased a copy of Birnbaum 1986. It was supposed to be a 1983 edition. That's what the seller advertised, but that's not what came in the mail. My question is this. Is there a big difference between the 83 and 86 editions? If there's little to no difference, then I won't worry about it. Andy, I don't know if we've answered you in 3 years, but this episode's for you.
That's right.
We're going to just, tell you all things Birnbaum. We might convince you to get the 83. You may already have it. We might convince you to get the 96 Kids edition. We just don't know here. So off of Andy's letter, we're going to get started to our main topic. But first, if you'd like to have your letter or question answered on a future episode, write us, podcast@retrowdw.com. We try to get to all of it. We try to message you back, and there's a shot that your story, your question, or whatever could end up on a future episode, like Andy here from 3 years ago. So,
Just like
let's get
Disney,
into-
old Imagineering ideas never go away. All our old questions never go away. So
exactly.
the mailbag is always there. So. All right. Well, as JT indicated, the mailbag is closed, and we're opening up for this month's topic, which we mentioned at the top of the show, is Steve Birnbaum Guides. Brian, you did a little digging on the history of guides at Walt Disney World, and also just in general of Birnbaum. So maybe you can kind of give the listeners a quick overview of who he was and how that came to be.
Well, I think we'll give the 60-second preamble, which starts with the famous story of Disneyland having a 25-cent souvenir map, souvenir book that was produced that Marty Sklar or marketing or whatever said, hey, Walt, it cost us 24 cents to produce this. And they wanted to raise the price to 50 cents. And he said, no. Wanted to keep it at a quarter because every time somebody left with a souvenir book, it sat on their coffee table somewhere in the country or in the world. And he wanted as many of those books out there as they could to encourage people to come to his park. So he saw it as a marketing tool. And that kind of held true before Birnbaum's came along. Todd, a lover of ephemera, what they had was park maps and travel promotional guides. So from the time the park opened, originally GAF, the photography camera company sponsor, until 1977 or 78, when Polaroid took over, they would print the daily maps that would be handed out in the parks, which really, if you remember, they had those booklet guides that were maybe 24 pages.
Sure, yeah.
And it was an 8.5 by 11 sheet folded over, so I think that makes it 5.5 by 8.5. And that's the way the book would be, and it would have, the park map would be there, and then there was like a write-up on each section, basically a lot of what ends up in the Birnbaum's guide, but they were free, paid for by one of the sponsors in the park, in this case usually the photography camera shop vendor, and they would give them out to you. And in hotels off property, the Vacation Land was published, and there are tons of copies of that around that were put in hotel and motel rooms and various other AAA. So like if you were planning a trip back then, what am I going to do? You would get a brochure, and you could either have one sent to you by calling or writing to them, or you would go to your local travel agent or AAA, outpost, and say, I want to take my wife and the kids to Walt Disney World, and they would have brochures and things like that. And that's kind of how you planned your trip, was kind of catch as catch can or learning from other people. But there was not a comprehensive guide. And maybe in the beginning there wasn't as much of a need for it, because we all know Orlando was a sleepy outpost when Disney World first opened.
Well, let's also admit too, the park was, shall we say, simple. You stayed at a hotel, you went to the park. There wasn't a guide of what to navigate and where to stay and what had the best person.
Right. And we know from the films that we buy that in the first half of the 70s, maybe people did 2 days at the parks.
Yeah.
They did the Magic Kingdom for a day. Sometimes they went back, and then you'd see them at Cypress Gardens or Busch Gardens or SeaWorld or Circus World or where else would we get? The Wax Museum or Kennedy Space Center.
Wiki Wachi, Marineland.
The various other Monkey Jungle down in Miami. They would go to different places because it was usually a road trip. And they, Disney World was a 2 or 3 day stop at most for them along the way. As it grew and the resort itself was developed, the more golf courses opened, more resorts opened, the shopping village was opened. GAF exited as the sponsor because they got out of the consumer camera market in 77 or 78. Polaroid took over, and then Polaroid paid for the guide and the maps. And they were the sponsor of the camera center. And then when Disney signed the deal with Kodak for Epcot, part of that deal was there was a very brief overlap where Kodak was in Epcot and Polaroid was in the Magic Kingdom, and then the Magic Kingdom shop and all the camera shops on property switched over to Kodak branding.
Right.
And then Kodak produced the maps, and the infamous thing for Epcot, if you remember, to promote the disc was that color wheel, the dial map that for Epcot that was we all have, and I don't know, we have 4 or 5 of them down in our archive down in Florida that we put out at events, but I know you have one, and other people, they said they're a popular collectible. And so at the time, all of a sudden, Walt Disney World was going to double in what it was going to be with Epcot opening. And in 1982, the first Birnbaum Guide was published. Steve Birnbaum, I'm going to make a reference here. So in the 1920s, 30s, there was a gentleman by the name of Duncan Hines who was a traveling salesman. And as he traveled back then, before the era of chain hotels, he would go from town to town, and he would keep a notebook of places that he stayed that were nice and things he liked. And his big thing was places that he ate, where he had a good meal, because you'd roll into a town, you didn't know anybody. You'd ask the gas station attendant or, whoever your day, where can I get a good dinner around here? Is there any place that, I can get a good breakfast around here? And they would make recommendations, and sometimes your meal was very good, and a lot of times it wasn't. So if you millennials want to know why chain restaurants became so popular, because you could get the same meal in Philadelphia that you could get in Boise, Idaho. You walked in, you knew what they were going to have, and it wasn't a crapshoot. And there is a comfort in that when you're traveling, where you just decide, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere where I know what I'm getting. But Duncan Hines was eventually encouraged to publish his guide because he had been to so many places. And so it became a good thing for a restaurant to get a good write-up in the booklet put out by Duncan Hines. And by the 1940s or 50s, I don't have any Wikipedia page up, so this is all off of memory, he then did license his name to start being used on cake mixes and baked goods, and that's why today there is Duncan Hines, which is my favorite brownie mix, and cakes and whatnot. So Duncan Hines, how does that relate to Steve Birnbaum? Well, Steve Birnbaum was a travel columnist who also wrote books. Steve and his wife would travel, and he would write books about touring Europe and going to different places, South America, and different places in America. And then at a certain point, he approached Disney and said, and he had a weekly newspaper column where he would give travel advice and answer travel questions. So much an authority on things, the way that Duncan Hines was. So he approached Disney about doing an official guide. And Disney, being the Dick Nunis run good neighbor operation, agreed. Like, this is not something we want to do.
Go do it for us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we want to partner with this guy to, cooperate with him and give him everything he needs, because there was this fervent belief that they had a superior product. The very first guide in 1982 and subsequent ones would have a cover letter from Walt Disney World President Dick Nunis on the inside cover. I'll give you a couple of the highlights from the 1983 edition I have in front of me, which is the first one that included the new Epcot Center. Although there was a little bit of a preview in the 82 version, which was the first one published.
I have the original one here, so I believe it's identical. Yeah, identical letter. So
I think there are actually some differences in the letter, because I read two versions of it today, but I'm going to follow
along with you here. I'm going to tell you if there's any differences.
When I first heard about Steve Birnbaum's desire to write a comprehensive guide to the Walt Disney World Vacation Kingdom, I was impressed that even Steve, with his acclaimed travel book reputation, would want to tackle such a project. As one who has spent a major part of my career within the operation of this vast resort complex, I knew he would be undertaking quite a task to provide an all-in-one source for anyone planning to visit Walt Disney World. After an initial year of research and another spent on this revision, Steve and his staff have succeeded.
The revision was, he didn't have that here. He just said Steve and his staff.
They've produced a book which is well organized and easily readable, and most importantly, complete and accurate. This guide, though written by someone who has never worked for our organization, captures the spirit of what everyone at Walt Disney World endeavors to achieve.
Yeah.
So that is the Dick Nunis cover letter. And I just want to note that my cover, or my edition on the next page, has a note on the owner. It's Dell and Khaki Brenneman, whose telephone number was 503-222
oh boy
6663. I would assume they are both dead, which is why I would probably now own this book. But if they're out there, thank you, Dell and Kathy.
Now, what's interesting about my 1982 book here is that it's called the Special Magic Kingdom Edition. And at the very back, they just inserted like cheap copy into the binding of Welcome to the Magic Kingdom Club. Check the blue pages last, and it's got discounts and exclusive vacation plans and additional benefits. National car rental, A-class economy, it says, JT. So,
what's interesting too, speaking of jotting things down, mine also has a phone number on it. I don't know who the owner was. I don't have notes.
Maybe they know each other.
Mine's an '86 edition. It was $7.95 back then.
Okay.
And right on the the D logo with the Mickey head, Walt Disney World. We have just 5 digits back there. Or no, what is that? 7 digits. 596-2000. That seems too easy. Like that's
yeah.
That's
corporate.
Yes.
That's a reservation number or something of some sort.
Yeah.
Now, what did you say the price was, JT, on yours?
$7.95 in 1986.
So my 83 version was $4.95.
So this 82 is $4.95, but look at this, gentlemen. Crossed out. Special Magic Kingdom price, $2.50.
Magic Kingdom Club. Did you see that?
Magic Kingdom Club price. Sorry, yes. Special Magic Kingdom Club price.
That's exciting.
So
I wanted to also mention, too, that travel guides went back very, very far. There is a series on BBC television, Railways of Great Britain, and it goes to Australia, and I'm trying to remember the host of this. Hold on one second. Let me look it up.
Brian, mine has the
It's
castle
Steve
cake
Birnbaum.
on the back. Got the castle cake here on the back of mine.
Oh, you got a 97. I just want to point
Michael
out
Portillo. Okay.
Oh, Michael Portillo from he used to be a member of Parliament. Yeah.
Correct. So, okay. So I just also want to say that travel guides are nothing new, even at this time in 1980. There were travel guides written back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And Michael Portillo, a former Parliament member in the UK, has a UK series where he goes through all different. It's called Great British Railway Journeys, and there's Great Alaskan Railway Journeys. There's Great USA Railway Journeys. He's got a number of them, Australian, you name it, it's there. And he arms himself with the what he calls the Bradshaw's Guide and the Appleton's Guide. And they were travel guides of what cities were like and what things were like, written from the perspective when there was no photography or very limited photography. So I just wanted to set the stage here that travel guides were not new at this time, but it was new for Disney World. It was new because it had expanded to a point, as we mentioned earlier, it was only 2 days ago, that you needed something. And sure enough, by the time Epcot come in there, boy, you've got resorts and you've got choices to make on a daily basis too.
Yeah, I mean, there would have been guides for Florida.
Yeah,
like
go to
AAA,
AAA, give you a couple brochures.
But even published ones from major publishers might have published like a full Florida one,
photos
with
or something like
maybe,
that.
Maybe a dozen pages on Walt Disney World. But the idea of writing an entire guide for a single attraction, I mean, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it really, really was, and it really quickly established itself as the book to read. So
I want to briefly kind of skim a couple of cherry pick a couple of comments here from the Travel by Bob Bruce. It was a column in the Abilene, Texas Reporter News. This was published in January of 1982. And it was announcing that The Best of Walt Disney World by Steve Birnbaum, published by Houghton Mifflin, 160 pages, had just been released. And he, built up here, this theme park in 6 areas and campgrounds and convention facilities and all of this huge vacation complex. Travel writer Steve Birnbaum details it all in his guidebook on Walt Disney World, a volume approximately the size of a single copy of National Geographic. Now, kids, National Geographic was something we called a magazine.
Yeah, those are papers.
And magazines would come beautifully printed on color paper once a month. In the case of National Geographic, these beautiful Kodachrome photos inside of it.
Except the edition of the 80s. Remember the 2 hologram covers?
Yeah.
Do you remember those?
Covers,
yeah.
Those were huge. It was what was it? What was the first one? Was it a skull?
Yeah. So before it was a television channel that apparently Disney has purchased.
Disney owns National Geographic.
It was a magazine that my grandfather had a prescription to, but we weren't allowed to look at it because
A
sometimes
prescription?
there were.
Did his doctor prescribe?
I'm sorry, I had a subscription to it, but we weren't allowed to look at it when we were at the house because sometimes there were native women that had exposed boobies in it, and
That's right.
my grandmother would not let us look at the National Geographics.
It was only
when
like
we were
once a
visiting.
year that happened.
That's once was enough. She
What?
wasn't taking any chances. Nan wasn't. But
Brian's
anyway,
in the bathroom with National Geographic.
so this is the first reference, by the way. WDW, as Birnbaum abbreviates it. So
Yeah.
maybe he was the first guy to abbreviate it like that.
Oh.
Recently was voted one of the top 10 most beautiful recreation areas in America in an unrelated poll of 500 travel writers. But
We
it's-
should, real quick, we should go back to National Geographic for a second, too. Don't forget, Walt Disney World as well as Disneyland was very well written up in National Geographic, too.
Oh, yes.
There were articles on that. You can buy copies of them online.
It says, for families keen on advanced preparation, Birnbaum's Guide should be a valuable pathfinder. And if you're thinking of browsing through WDW for just a day, think again. It's too much of an in-depth destination, suggests Birnbaum. And, it breaks down more of what's there. There is some quotes. He had interviewed Birnbaum, but he talks about and we can go through it, but how the book's laid out. Deciding how much you want to spend and the type of property you want to stay at, and not mistaking that, by staying in downtown Orlando and realizing that then you're, 30, 40 miles away from the actual complex, when to go. I mean, all of that. None of that was ever published anywhere before.
Right.
So, we'll look at that a bit, but it's just so interesting that it warranted an entire, article from this travel writer. And that the Birnbaum Guide is an essential part of it if you're planning the trip there. Yep. So that was the 1982 introduction, and I had given you another clip from later in 1982, where a writer for the Chicago Tribune just mentions that the first official guide to the Great American Tourist Magnet in Florida, this guide by Steve Birnbaum and his staff, zeroes in on every facet of Walt Disney World as well as what else is in the Orlando area. It says it's worth every cent because it consolidates every bit of information that visitors to America's most popular tourist attraction would want. It says there's a few admissions, such as the names of the real people who inhabit the Mickey and Minnie Mouse costumes. Tee-hee-hee, what a great joke.
There were a lot of little jabs and jokes in the book, and actually people over the years, and also I remember when my mom first got a Birnbaum's book, she was like, I'm surprised Disney lets them put this in, but he did it right, and I think it was well done. So.
Here was the important part in this, and this is 1982 in Chicago. It just, after going over everything else in the guide, it says there's hints for older travelers, lost adults, and for the handicapped. There's also a handy chart that shows when the crowds are heavy, 2 weeks around Easter Sunday and June through August, and light Thanksgiving to Christmas. An official guide usually criticizes nothing, but this one contains candid comments on restaurants and hotels. Disney World does get about 13 million visitors a year of all ages. It's geared for the masses. So it is inevitable that neither critics nor guests will be pleased with everything. So that is an important thing, that even though this was the official one and Disney cooperated with it, he was not, and he and his staff were not hesitant to kind of tell you, maybe this isn't the spot for you, which I thought was, an important point to make.
Yep.
So those are my, just early sound bites on Steve Birnbaum's first guide and how people reacted to it.
And I also want to say that he was very truthful. Disney really gave him a leash that I think was different from the Disney polished and candied and smiling thing that you would see in parades and things like that. they gave him a long leash where he was very honest in terms of what he saw, but he also presented you information that you did not know, because there's a lot of historical as well as construction information and how many pounds have went into it. I mean, I literally just looked at this. And Brian, did you know this? Euro, or gyro, or what, I forget the official name.
Gyro, yeah.
Gyro, yeah, he was 4'10". He weighed 150 pounds. I mean, I'm just looking down, and that's the type of stuff that Birnbaum put in there. That
what's his win-loss record in the ring?
It does not have that. He performed 30-minute shows 7 times a day, so I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit. That's 210 minutes of complete action without getting a knockout, without being knocked down. So, but what amazed me, and I want to talk a little bit about my personal affection for this series, but also for a specific year. The year that I went down to Epcot for the first time was 1986. And as I mentioned earlier, my mom purchased a Birnbaum's Guide, which that exact copy is sitting in front of me with me now. It's been in our family. It's been with me probably since that trip, probably. And I remember poring over this before the trip and after the trip, because the way that the book was laid out, as I mentioned, the information, it was also, and I hope that a lot of our listeners can identify with this, it was also a wealth of information that you were trying to get and understand about the history of Walt Disney World. Back in the 80s, if you were interested in this stuff, early 90s, there were only so many books. I'm sure we all bought the big honkin' Epcot book that's, 500 pages or whatever the heck it is. And that was a lot of pictures and stuff. But sitting here reading through this, it got you psyched for a vacation, but it also educated you on the history. So I'm no doubt I've read this thing cover to cover when I was young, and still to this day, I really enjoy reading because it is also a time capsule of what those attractions were like. And as you guys know, I wrote my own travel guide that I wanted to be more concise than Birnbaum and be able to tell things in a different manner, I should say. But I remember even writing mine and trying to imitate or follow his style, using words like, and as you get off the ride, there's flowers abound, because that's what he would do, and all the statistics. What I did differently in my book was that I decided to save the statistics and pull them out of the actual ride descriptions or resort descriptions and put them in a separate area that I called, facts and interesting things or whatever it was. So, but I thought what would be fun, gentlemen, too, is, we all have guides in front of us, too. To find some things that may or may not resonate today, or I found a couple ones here. I want to read this one. I have one here that you guys would consider ourselves Walt Disney World veterans, wouldn't you? We've all been there many times, and most of our literature. So I want to give you some tips from Walt Disney World veterans, and let's see if any of these ring true today. You want to study up before you arrive to the Magic Kingdom so you're familiar with the layout. Let's see. Allow plenty of time so that you can sample the Magic Kingdom in small bites. Trying to see it all in a day or even just 2 is like eating a rich ice cream sundae too quickly. And JT, Walt had ice cream every night, right?
Every night, sprinkled some coffee grounds on it, the whole thing. That's
paid
why
paid a quarter for a souvenir book.
Yep, sat down.
That's why the ice cream shop faces the castle.
That's right.
That's what they said anyway.
Some of those books are worth a couple $1,000 because he signed them now, Brian. Find one of those with Walt's signature on it.
I can't give you that. I do have, however, Dell and Khaki Brenneman and their phone number. So
okay.
I don't know what that's worth.
All right. Well, so here's a good one, guys. Try to visit the park on a weekend in summer at any day but Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Can you imagine now going to the park in summer? On a Saturday.
So that's the only time I can go.
Well, that's true, JT. Yeah, your job just he says have breakfast in Town Square, Crystal Palace, and be at the end of Main Street when the rest of the park opens, which I think a lot of people do. He say break up your day by going to the water park.
I got some bad news here, big guy.
What do you got?
Del Brenneman passed away on Sunday, August 23rd, 2015.
Oh.
After a brief but valiant battle with cancer at his home in Oregon. So I dedicate this book I'm holding to you.
There we are.
At that time, however, Khaki had survived him. So we hope
Okay.
she's still out there.
Maybe she's
And
listening.
I want them to know that, maybe they're listeners and that we're enjoying their book.
Yep, exactly. And if you have a limited amount of time, don't hesitate to ask a Disney employee for suggestions of what to do next.
Yeah, I love those, like the calendar and the weather and
Yeah.
just the whole idea of like, hey man, the best times to go like right after Thanksgiving all the way up until right before Christmas.
Well,
and now you go there then and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, all 4 parks are full.
exactly. Well, you'll like this section then, Brian. There's two things that will run true. First of all, there's a section in here called where to eat in Epcot Center if you don't have reservations.
All right.
So that's great. And he basically recommends every, quick well. But here's some other hot tips I wanted to give you guys. This is for Epcot. Let's see how right there. Oh, he says get precise, up-to-date information by calling a number. So, okay, how about this one? During peak seasons, preferred reservation times at Epcot Center's full-service restaurants are fully booked by 10 a.m. That's amazing that you could walk up in that morning and get a reservation, which I remember doing. Have dinner at one of the Walt Disney World Resort hotels or in the Walt Disney World Village if you don't have a reservation, want something more elaborate than what Epcot Center's fast food eateries are offering. Save the Shops and Communicore East and West and the World of Motion's Trans Center for the congested mid-afternoon hours. Go to as many attractions as possible in the peaceful early morning and late afternoon hours. Okay, I mean, I could see that working. Although Trans Center, yeah, you could enter the Trans Center without going through the World of Motion, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Visit World Showcase in the morning. It's uncongested until about 11 a.m. That's why they it doesn't open until 11
It's closed.
a.m.
So, of course, it was easy. It was uncongested. Nothing was open.
Nothing was open. See Future World in the evening, avoiding the busy morning hours. Remember that throughout Epcot Center, the queues are longest during midday and shortest during the evening. We can't forget, too, there was no entrance in the early days when I'm reading this in A6 from International Gateway. So
Right.
Don't queue for the World Showcase Promenade buses, Brian. I'm sorry. You'll get there faster by walking, and you'll spend comparable amount of time on your feet. So,
And you would read that exact same advice every year about these, I wanted to call it the Skyliner, but what was it called in the Magic Kingdom before?
Skyway.
Skyway.
Oh, the Magic Skyway, yeah.
They would have that in every Skyway right up in the 90s and 2000s. Like, don't waste your time. It's faster to walk until they close the...
I've got a tip here, Todd.
Yeah, what do you got?
This is from 1997. This is how to get the best photos. And there's a little area called rental cameras. It says video cameras may be rented at the camera shops in all 3 theme parks. The cost is $25 a day with a $300 refundable deposit that can be charged to Amex, Visa, or MasterCard. While no 35mm cameras are available for rent, disposable cameras may be purchased. And finally, 2-hour film processing is available at all the parks and the Disney Village Marketplace, wherever a Photo Express sign is displayed.
Wow.
Film is processed right on premises.
What year was that?
97.
So $25 in 1997. That's $50 today to rent a camera. Would you pay $50 to rent a cell phone today?
Well, no, because I have one.
Yeah. JT, I have a question for you, though. What would you do if you got lost? What would you do if a lost?
We always set a place. My parents would always tell us when we came in to go to, I think it was, what's the left? City Hall, my parents would say. And they'd point it out, and I remember that specifically.
Where would you meet in Epcot?
We didn't go to Epcot more than twice.
Okay,
so we
never
never really had that talk.
JT, your parents had to have read this book. I'm going to read for we did not set this up, ladies and gentlemen. Occasionally, traveling companions do get separated in the press of the crowds, and someone fails to show up at an appointed meeting spot. Boom, there you go. Appointed meeting. So it's good to know that guest relations meeting takes the message book in City Hall. Look at that.
That's where you meet.
They read this. So
now, I did point out to my daughter just recently at Typhoon Lagoon, there's a family reunification spot. I go, if we get separated in the wave pool and you lose me, I'll find you here. Talk to this lifeguard.
There you go.
So we still do the same thing to this day.
I want to go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we have hints for traveling with children. Hints
They put a lot of that
single
in there.
travelers, older travelers.
Well, I want to mention Steve himself writes a lengthy. They got shorter as the years went on, but usually a 2 or 3 page introduction, personally from Steve Birnbaum. And in the one here, he always lists all the Disney folks who've helped him. Some of them are names I recognize, guys that are still around, gals that are still around, some that are active online. I kept looking to see if there was any of them we'd actually had at one of our events yet, and no, but there are people here who've been mentioned at our events. But he does say that in this one, despite the designation of official guide, I must hasten to add that the Walt Disney World staff has exercised no veto power whatsoever over the contents of this book. Quite the contrary, they have opened their files and explained operations to us in the most generous way imaginable so that we could prepare the comprehensive appraisals, charts, and schedules that were necessary to help visitors understand the very complex workings of a very complex enterprise. And as I said, there's 4 or 5 paragraphs of people that he thanks. And it mentions in one of the articles or one of the intros I read that he spoke to guys like Tony Baxter and Randy Bright and them when he was doing these about the attractions that were, so that he could write knowledgeably. Even if as a casual writer, you might not have understood everything that might have been going on, they would go that extra mile to make sure that even though they wrote generally brief blurbs about these things, they were very learned information that they were sharing.
Yeah. And it's the attention to detail that he did in this too.
Well, this one here, and just in the when to go at the beginning.
Yes, that's exactly what
there
I
are
was looking at.
2.5 pages of events outside Disney.
Yes.
That suggest, hey, if this is something that interests you, like the Sarasota Medieval Fair, or the Winter Park Sidewalk Art Festival, or the Orlando Pioneer Day, or my favorite,
one, the Zellwood Sweet Corn Festival in May.
Who wouldn't want to go to see 20
miles
miles northwest of Orlando, see the production of its sweet corn? I like the December St. Petersburg, Florida tournament of bands.
There we go.
You could just go and watch a series of concerts from bands all over the place.
Do you think your Philadelphia Mummers went to that?
I don't think so. I think they probably stuck with Florida bands.
That's probably
the
true.
Kissimmee Boat-Acade.
Yep.
That's Boat-A-CADE, Boat-Acade. In June would have attracted my attention. I got to tell you that.
And then
this is saying hey, you're not just coming for Disney. Here's the other stuff you might want to see when you come.
It's the good neighbor thing. And then he goes into multiple pages about 2 and 3 day visits up all the way up to a 5-day visit, which I know a lot of people do now, and that touring plans and other places. The reservations page and the how to get there is amazing. Now, first of all, the reservation guide has everything from sports and great times, good meals, activities, Sunday brunches, and lists the phone number for each one and tells you whether or not they're advisability of reservations, who can go, how far in advance, and then the how to get there by car floors me. JT, pick a major city. Give me a major city in the United States right now.
Let's go with Dallas, Texas.
Dallas. You're going to take I-20 east to Shreveport, Route 1 to Alexandria, US 71 south to US 190 east, I-10 east, I-12 east, I-10 east, I-75 south, Florida Turnpike east, US 27 south, Route 192 east, total mileage 1,076. What other guidebook? Do you think anybody sat down? And I think the answer is yes. Somebody took a highlighter and went Dallas and put this on a map and highlighted his route.
I am very proud of the fact that Philadelphia is one of 5 cities, maybe if you include
It's like two
Cincinnati,
directions.
6,
There's
where
two
there's
turns.
it's like 4 sentences because it's they're at Baltimore, Atlanta.
I-95 South.
Yeah, they're all basically get on I-95 South, get to I-4, go to
Go to
Route 192.
192. That's it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Boston's very complicated. Actually, Boston's the most complicated.
It really is.
He's
well,
listing
anybody
the
who's ever
bridges.
driven in Boston will understand why it's so complicated.
Oh yeah, nothing. And getting around New York City, he does.
I mean,
route
when
you
the
around.
the roads were laid out by Paul Revere and a horse and a
A Silver Cup. That's right.
Yeah.
So he does go into bus and by air. Incidentally, we've heard from people from the auto train. Have we ever heard from anybody who took a Greyhound bus?
No, but I did see that in here. That's an option.
It is an option.
It's still an option today, by the way.
Sure.
You can
Well,
still take the bus.
Yeah.
But the train is interesting because it does mention the auto train in here. Oh no! This is when this was during the brief period where they killed the auto train.
Oh, they killed it. Okay.
It says the auto train, which once transported vacationers in their cars to Central Florida, is no more.
Ah, see,
But
here in
but
86, it's back.
But Amtrak still serves the Orlando area twice daily from New York City.
Okay.
The trip takes 24 hours and costs in the neighborhood of $260 round trip.
Okay. Now, you guys the other day were looking at the auto train in terms of cost. What did you come up with now, the auto train? From what'd you do? From Virginia, right? It wasn't cheap.
Virginia to Orlando. I think the car alone was the ticket alone was $250, and then it was like $80 for the car or something like that. It was expensive.
And that's for a seat. That's
yeah,
a seat.
That's
if you want one of the rooms to sleep in, it's like $900.
Well, that's interesting because it's saying here in 1980 the fare for a car was $200 and $130 per adult and $98 for children. So that's interesting. So it's definitely changed a little bit. I also love, just because I'm an airline geek, he gives you tips on how to discover the lowest airfare. And then he says, which airlines fly from your city? And he's got this list of all major airports in the United States and then a line of dashes and then tells you what airline flies there. Now, JT, this is a little quiz for you. You ready?
Okay.
I'm going to give you the 2-letter code for an airline. And I want you to tell me what... Now, these are not official airline codes because... Did you know that the airline code for JetBlue is actually B6? When it's flying in the air, it's B6.
I have no idea.
You had
I
no
would
idea.
think it would JB.
Right. You think
He's
you
not
would
an
think
aviation
it's
guy.
not an aviation geek. So, all right. Some of these are easy. I'm going to start with the really easiest one. AA.
American
Oh,
Airlines.
you nailed it. All right. Let's get you another easy one. US.
U.S. Air.
There you go. Or Allegheny Commuter, just so you know, because that was the.
And I will note for JT.
Yeah, I was going to go with that first.
Yeah.
I will note for JT that the lone airline flying from Canton, Akron in 1983 to Orlando was...
Continental?
No, Allegheny Commuter, a.k.a. U.S. Air.
There we
Okay.
go. All right.
Do you
here
recall
we-
my dad getting U.S. Air peanuts and stuff for us on his business trips?
They were probably so fancy when you got home, little peanut bags.
Salty.
So here,
Very
these are a
salty.
little tougher, JT. I just want to see. What would be EA?
Eastern Airlines?
That's good. What about FL?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, that's Frontier.
Since you brought it up, Todd,
Yeah.
I am. I'm gonna mention here as I look at the Whisper liner,
The Whisper.
the Whisper liner,
Whisper.
the little blow up of the Wings of the World here as the official airline of Walt Disney World. Eastern Airlines not only has its own attraction, if you had wings, but also its own ticket offices right on the property. One right inside the Magic Kingdom attraction where you could book plane tickets. The other on its first floor lobby of the Contemporary Resort Hotel.
So
The close Disney-Eastern relationship also means that when guests make a reservation at a Walt Disney World hotel, the Central Reservations Office can also arrange for an Eastern representative to call them and help them with flight arrangements. It couldn't be easier.
it couldn't
guys.
be easier.
Eastern's passengers also benefit from the tie by being able to fly on the only airline that is able to offer packages that include lodgings at the Contemporary Resort, the Polynesian Resort, and the Golf Resort. It is not an insignificant advantage, according to Steve.
Now, are they
Birnbaum.
showing a picture of the whisper liner, the L1011? Or the whisper? There it is. That's the L1011. Isn't that a beautiful
It's right
jet?
there. Yes, it is. The little tri-jet,
Now, by 1986, Eastern had switched the photograph to the 757, the Boeing 757.
Okay.
And just to round out our airlines things here, JT, I want to give you a couple of the airlines that don't make any sense. What would ZO be?
I don't know.
That's Florida Express. Come on, that's pretty apparent.
I knew that.
And
Yeah.
9S,
Nothing.
Skyway Commuter. And the last one here, NT.
Northwest.
No, that's Air New Orleans.
Oh, well, why wouldn't it be?
Why wouldn't it be? Just like
There are-
JetBlue is B6.
There's some tough questions tackled here. One, should you buy a package?
Oh.
Two, should you use a travel agent?
Can we pause on that
Three-
for a second too? The package thing is
Yeah.
crazy because the package, like, people don't realize how much a la carte you could go back then, right? You could and I think when he's saying package, he's not even looking at a Disney package. He's also like talking, should we throw our air and our rental car and all that stuff.
Well, at that time, you also had the deal with American Express, so that with Epcot, so they were the only credit card accepted by Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Once they signed the deal to sponsor the American Adventure, so American Express through their travel agency offered packages, and so did Eastern Airlines, and they were the only two that offered lodgings with Disney World's on-site hotels, which they only had a couple back then.
Yeah.
But you also had travel agents, AAA, all these other bundlers would package up these things. I mean, we have endless ads. In fact, our friend Gary, shout out Gary, who just got the pins out of his leg this past week.
He's relaxing.
He's relaxing. He's resting up for Retro Magic. He's the guy that runs on stage and sets stage between sets.
Right. So he's got to get that muscle tone built back up.
Yeah, he's got a year to work like
Gotta
Robin.
fit in.
Yeah, what he doesn't realize,
Training to
gentlemen,
fight Drago.
we're using Lazy Boys on the next Retro Magic, so he's going to have to really, really bulk up.
We have an all black bodysuit, so he blends in better.
Gary's family had a travel agency, and they ran bus tours from Rhode Island, New England, down to Walt Disney World, which was we find ads for that stuff all over the country. When we look at papers from the 70s, 80s, 90s, that was very common to be like, you meet in this parking lot over here. And I remember when my high school band went to play in the Magic Kingdom, the buses left like the high school parking lot at 7:00 in the morning. And, it was a 16-hour drive plus a stop, both ways. they were bussing it. So that was those organized tours, which are still run. I mean, we have one company near us, Perkiomen Tours, who still does those kind of things where you can it's a 2-week tour now, and you stop and see the Vanderbilt estate on the way and things like that, and cities along the route. But you end up staying in Howard Johnson's or something when you get there.
That's where Howe is.
Yeah, that is.
That's how it goes, yeah.
Wonder if he got a package deal.
Yeah.
He could have. All right, I want to play a game, and I'm curious.
Let's play a
So
game.
this is 1997.
Okay.
And this is something that I don't know if it exists now. I'm sure some travel agent has this, but we're going to play how far in advance you can make a reservation for a specific thing at Disney World.
And what year was this?
1997. 97.
I'm not looking because I got a different page.
No.
open.
Okay. All right, let's say you want to eat at Boatwright's Dining Hall. How early can you call to make that reservation?
You said 97.
97, Boatwright's at Dixie Landings Resort.
97. I'm going to guess 30 days.
Todd?
45.
60 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's say I want to get a golf lesson at the Palm and or Magnolia Golf Course. How early can I reserve that golf
I'm going
lesson?
90.
Okay.
Going
A
1
lesson,
week.
not a tea time.
I'm going 1 week.
Oh,
Believe it
a
or not,
lesson. Okay.
A lesson,
Sorry,
a
okay.
private lesson. And
I
they
will
give the phone number.
I'll just leave my answer. Brian is going to win this one. He's got this one.
1 year.
Whoa.
1 year.
Wow.
Who's
Okay, I was
teaching you,
close.
Arnold Palmer?
Yeah, really. Like, what are they reserving here?
All right, I'd like to do a few more. Let's say I want to go fishing from Fort Wilderness Boat Dock, and I have the phone number here. How early can I book my fishing excursion from Fort Wilderness?
That's got to be a year as well.
$1.
He's go with 1 hour. 1 hour.
14 days in advance
All right,
is
there
as
you
early
go.
as you
That
can
one.
book it. All right, let's say
He's over. I win both showcases.
Let's say I'm gonna after fishing, I'm gonna do Hoop-Dee-Doo. How early can I book my Hoop-Dee-Doo musical review?
See,
tickets?
that's a show, and I'm gonna let Brian go first. I jumped.
I'm
in
still going to
last,
say
so.
60 days. I'm going to if a restaurant reservation 60 days, I'm going to guess that, but I have it coded.
I got to go higher. It's going to be 90 or higher.
2 years.
Whoa!
All right, so I this is where I'm going to do a Birnbaum mention because there are a few things I learned about from Birnbaums, and when I started buying the guides every year before a trip in the 90s, when I started going on my own, every edition, they'd reprint a lot of the same stuff every year and just kind of update it, but they pimped the Hoop-Dee-Doo musical review.
Did they really?
As this is the
Cat's
Hamilton
pajamas.
of Broadway, like it is the greatest thing on property, and if you do nothing else, you should buy a ticket and go see the Hoop-Dee-Doo musical review, which I neglected their advice for about 40 years before going to see it with Hal and his family. Oh, I don't know, 8-10 years ago for the first time, maybe something like that.
Did you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I never saw it, and I've been back. Went back again a few years ago to see it a second time, but I mostly go back for the strawberry shortcake. I mean,
Because we're being candid tonight very much in this episode. What did you think?
I get why it was I get why there are people who love it.
Yeah.
As I've always told people, I am not a fan of live entertainment while I am attempting to have a meal that I enjoy with, like, talking to people at my table and all.
Right.
And
You mean an energetic troupe of singing, dancing, wisecracking entertainers who keep audience chuckling,
Exactly.
grinning, and whooping it up for 2 hours during a procession of barbecued ribs,
like
fried chicken, corn on the cob, strawberry shortcake, and other stomach-stretching victuals?
yeah.
You don't want to...
If you put me, if I had a choice, like hey, there's this, the old Scat Cats bar or something.
Yeah.
There's a place over here where you can sit and some guy's going to be playing the bass and there's somebody tickling the ivories, in the background, setting the mood, and I'm having a cocktail and talking to you, and I'd be there every night.
I
However, if
agree with you.
send me to the resort next door and say, hey, Yeehaw Bob is going to be banging on the piano, singing funny songs, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing on the planet I would less like to do than be in that scenario. That's
with
me.
you. No, Brian, I'm with you 100%. I think the other problem that I have, and this is no offense to actors and actresses and stage productions, is that How knows this. If he was here, he would
Yes.
give me the
You
explain.
do not like the musical.
I don't like the musical.
Tammy, cover your ears.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tammy, but I don't like the performances. I don't like the extended gestures and what's the word I'm looking for?
Projection.
Projection. And the extra makeup. I understand why it's there, because it's there to fill the house and make sure everyone can see the movement. And similar to you, Brian, I don't like people coming over, and I feel embarrassed for other people when people come over, and I feel embarrassed for myself. And I'd like to just enjoy the food. So my mom was thoroughly embarrassed during that. She was, I didn't enjoy the Hoop-Dee-Doo. It's just, it's not my thing. And like you said, Brian, I can see why people do. It's their thing. The one that my mom did not like, I know for sure, was she did not like the Broadway at the top. What was it?
The top of
Broadway,
the world.
top of the world. Top of the world.
The show.
Yeah,
the
when they
dinner
came
show.
over and sang "Hello, Dolly" and sat next to my mom and tried to get her to sing. That was I really want to do that.
I'm paying to watch you sing, Chief.
Yeah, don't get me.
I don't need to be part of the show.
Right. So
now, I've done the Hoop-Dee-Doo a few times, and all we was again you'd see people going in because we'd be hanging out at Fort Wilderness, whatever. It has a time and a place.
Yeah.
I think it's not something I haven't done it for 10 years, and I'm at the point where I'm going to take my kids one of these years because they'll get a kick out of it.
Take a cast member so you can get half price tickets. That's my advice to you.
There you go.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, it's, for what it is, it's not a horrible deal. But,
no, it's. I mean, I the second time I went, I had a good time both times. The second time I went with my friend Lauren. We were looking at available reservations, and I said, you know what, Hoop's open. Do you want to go there? And we had fun, and I swung my towel around. I mean, I got into it. Like, it's fine. But so we have a Mexican restaurant near here that does a mariachi night like every 2 months. And they do not have a very big, it's not a huge restaurant. But once the mariachi band starts playing, all conversation at the table stops because you can't possibly speak to anybody.
Sure.
While this, quintuplet of musicians is running around, singing Alien El Rancho Grande next to your table or something like that. So what I tell people is it's great to go there if you don't want to talk to the person you're having dinner with.
Yeah,
it's a perfect environment if you're like going out with somebody who you don't have a lot to say to. You're like, all right, we'll go to dinner here.
Birnbaum
and the food's good.
Birnbaum recommends reservations are hard to come by, so he recommends a 2-year window on that.
Okay.
Well, let me say this to you, JT. If you can't afford or you're trying to economize, there's a whole page here in 1983 on how to cut travel costs. And one of the departments is food. And what Steve Birnbaum advises is that you should get your hot meals in cafeterias instead of waitress service restaurants.
Oh.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with the Southern cafeterias, which are Luby's and Piccadilly, and I'm trying to think of some of the others, I think if Todd and I were going down the line, we might think also suggesting places like Ponderosa and Bonanza, those kind of places where there might be an entree on a tray that you pick up, but there would also maybe be a salad bar of some unlimited items and all. But anyway, that's cafeteria.
Oh, that sounds like Le Cellier years ago.
Here it is. Visit fancier establishments at lunchtime rather than dinner. And the very same entrees usually cost less than. Carry sandwich fixins and have lunches al fresco when possible.
This sounds like the people that would make sandwiches, like they'd order like a slice of bread and a milk, and then go make sandwiches with the honey at the fixins bar at Pecos Bills.
Look for lodging places with kitchen facilities. The savings on food, especially for families, may be more than the extra accommodations expense when you get a place that's got a kitchen inside of it. So, as opposed to modern, things where they're like, "Hey, steal all the toppings at Pico Spills."
Exactly.
These guys actually have some suggestions.
Yeah, don't want to pay for lunch? Steal the toppings. Make your own salad in a ketchup cup.
Now, JT, I know something with the resorts here that doesn't really blend with today. You are a gentleman who has embraced some of the running at Walt Disney World, right? You've done the marathon. So I just want to give you 2 tips on where to run.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Jogging, by the way. We're not doing like running. We're jogging.
Yeah, there's some different jogging areas. I'm curious if I know we're thinking of the same ones.
Well, you might not have directions after this. The Fort Wilderness Exercise Trail is only a short run away. Inquire at the desk for directions.
We used to do this. It was a parkour.
Okay.
And you'd go out there and it'd be, the little signs carved out of the wood.
And then you do the little exercise.
You do the little exercise, the monkey bars, and then you come back.
Okay.
It was actually basically where how you connected to Wilderness Lodge nowadays. Like it was that way. I think it's gone now.
This is great. We're under the Polynesian Village, and it says the Fort Wilderness Exercise Trail and the roads around the golf resort are just a short jog away. Ask for directions at the front desk. Can you imagine back in 1986 jogging? There's no easy way to jog over to Fort Wilderness.
No, because was the road even there to Wilderness Lodge, that Timberline Drive?
No.
So that would be, there's
no easy way, which is pretty fun. And I just like everything is like go ask at the desk for these types of things.
They still have a vintagey one at Contemporary. It's got an old Mickey in a running suit. I actually just
really?
had Hal clean up the image for me, and it's like the contemporary jogging trail. It's around the grounds there.
Oh, so much recreation in here too. Let's see if there's any more information on that trail. All right.
Now,
yeah,
I remember this happened one trip. Used to, nowadays, if let's say you're in the bubble in the parks, you can hop on any bus and go anywhere for the most part.
Right.
In one trip, they really emphasized you need to bring either a ID card or a ticket or something to be allowed admission onto the bus or monorail. And this is 97 again. I'm still in here. It says, guests wishing to use the Walt Disney World transportation system must be prepared to present proof of their riding privileges, usually a park ticket or resort ID card. And you had to show them either a resort ID card, 5 or 4 day park hopper tickets, 1 day theme park ticket, River Country or Hoop-Dee-Doo tickets, and all those things will let you get onto the buses or monorails.
You know, it's funny. I remember being printed those tickets and the ID cards, and I don't remember ever a single. I would flash them because I thought it was like
care.
power. They didn't give a shit, you know.
No, it was just I recall certain years were more emphasized than others. Like, hey, make sure you have this on the ready because they're not going to let you on the bus if you don't have it. And it was even weirder because back in, we were into cabins by now, but at one point it was like, well, we don't have a room key. We drug our camper down here. What are we supposed to use? But
Brian, you mentioned the good neighbor thing that not only Walt Disney World was doing, but also Birnbaum was doing in this. And I just wanted to mention everybody here too. There's 9 pages on places to stay outside of Walt Disney World. He first starts at the Village Hotel Plaza. Then he jumps to US 192. Then he says Florida Center accommodations, and then he goes into miscellaneous accommodations, and he even dives into some that have accommodations for camping and conventions and things like that. So I just want to reiterate to people too, this is not a book, as we said earlier, that is written under Walt Disney World's shiny, candy, perfect world, and he was given that leeway to go outside, which I think is fantastic. So
I have a tip here from 1986, which has been a Disney tip that annoys me more than any Disney.
It's got to be go to the left in the lines.
No,
it's not.
It's worse than that. It's they say this on the travel things, the resort TV. This is in 1986. Tips from Walt Disney World veterans. Break up your day. Buy a River Country ticket at the entrance to the Magic Kingdom and plan on heading for its beach when the crowd gets thickest.
That means get out of the park. We have too many people here.
Or take in Discovery Island or head back to the hotel if it's not too far for some swimming and other activities. I cannot imagine a world where I trudge all the way to the Magic Kingdom, finally get there, get into the park, and you know what? It's about noon. I'm going to suit up and go swimming at River Country or Typhoon Lagoon. That's just, and wait in more lines. Or it's just
change in the monorail on your way over if you've got
so I do that to cool off, is what they say. And then I take another few hours. I'm back at the park after I changed again. It's just a horrible tip. I hate that one.
I can't say I've gone to a water park midday. I have gone to a water park and then gone to a park. I certainly have done that. And I've gone to a park, gone back to the hotel, swam, and got back to a park. I've done that.
I part of my touring plan anymore almost is always, there's the morning session, the afternoon off, and then out for the night. But sure. I'm not lugging kids with me either, so
sure,
that changes the way that you tour. And I mean, there are times where I'll just stay in the park, but especially when it's boiling hot out, down there. If I'm there
I can't imagine trudging through Typhoon Lagoon. Is my break.
No. Right.
That's something that the Expedition Everests, the people who pack like the backpack for like they're going away for a week for the day in the park, like they can do that stuff because like got 4 changes of clothes back here and. Sandwich fixins and
think about how easy it was to get over to Fort Wilderness, though. You took one boat, a direct boat from the Magic Kingdom.
That is true. That was much easier to go to
And
River
once you got
Country.
off that boat, you walked right over to Fort Wilderness. I'm sorry, to
River Country.
To River Country. So
now they do say if you have a limited amount of time remaining before meeting the rest of your group, don't hesitate to ask a Disney employee for suggestions about things to do. I'd love to walk up to a cast member. I've got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Well, we want you to go over there. Why don't you stand and listen to this MP3 that's going to play in the Disney app?
Have you seen the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse? Because I recommend it highly.
It's
I would
amazing.
love for them to give me an option that doesn't spend money now.
Have you started looking for hidden Mickeys?
In addition to the Hoop-Dee-Doo hoopla that they would engage in, the other thing I specifically remember from my 1990s guides is that is where I learned about what we now call Tonga toasts. And how I remember reading about it is, and I almost feel like it was one of those little boxes that was a blowout.
What year?
And
do you
I'd
think
have
it
to
was
go back
from?
and look because I went in 95 and then I started going 98, 99.
All right, hold on, I got 94 here. Hold on.
So you would look where I remember it being mentioned is in the write-up on Port Orleans or Dixie Landings when they were
Tonga
two different
toast.
resorts.
Okay.
Well, no, it was there. It was banana stuffed French toast, which was I think they called it banana Foster French toast there
Sure.
because New Orleans. But I'm pretty sure that's because at the time they used to serve it in a lot of places. The golf resort had a strawberry stuffed one. I have it here in the 83 guide. It just mentions it when they're talking about the Coral Isle Cafe. At the breakfast, the South Seas decor serves the usual accompaniments, plus granola and other cereals and wonderful banana stuffed French toast, one of the best of all Walt Disney World dishes. And so I didn't know anything about it. When we went in the 1988, I never had it. But sometime in reading the 90s guides, I'm like, probably got to try this stuff at some point. They say it's the best thing on property.
Yeah,
And of course, I got it. And the first thing I always do when somebody puts either French toast or pancakes or something from it, I put syrup on it. And I put syrup on that stuff and said, holy God, this is so sweet. I don't even need syrup. I'm scraping the syrup off.
Yeah. I'm looking at 94 here, and it's really only mentioned, like you said, at the Coral Isle Cafe. I can check 99, but that's probably too late for your... I was looking at the guides then because I only went. I went in 95 and then I didn't go again until 98. I started going in. So it would be in there somewhere. But those are the two specific things when somebody talks about Birnbaums that I kind of remember specifically learning about. Like, the Birnbaum guide says this is really number one. And, you learn about the rest of the stuff, the attractions and when to go and, just used to follow those things. But
So one of the Birnbaum, I don't want to say it's like a spin-off. This was like, gosh, I think I was in like 5th grade, 6th grade. They had the Birnbaums for Kids guide. And, every trip it was like we weren't going to the amount we went now. We go like once a year at best. And it was like, pick your souvenir. And, for a couple of years I got the guide because it was sold right in the gift shop at, Fort Wilderness or wherever we were staying. And of course, we had a 16-hour car ride home, and I would just sit here and read this book the whole way home, just cover to cover. And they did some weird things in them, like different from Steve's take. This was more kids wrote the book. Kids came up with the tips, so it was kind of tacky, but at the same time, it was.
It used to say for kids by kids on it.
That's
cool. And so, I'm on Discovery Island. There's quotes from, Robert here. He says, it's a place I could go to 100 times and never be bored. And they tell you different things, different tips, what each place is in. It was kind of, I'm guessing they lowered the reading level and comprehension. And also the font on it is bigger. So it was definitely easier to read for kids. The first edition I got was this 94, 95 edition, and believe it or not, they put these pictures of kids, and they're the ones that helped write this. Well, one of them was Taryn Noah Smith, the star of Home Improvement, was one of the kids in there.
Look at that.
And he was 9 years old when he worked on this book, and it says he plays Mark Taylor on Home Improvement. So somehow there was a tie-in there.
I would imagine that might have something to do with Disney buying ABC that year. Just a shot.
I mean, little tips, little fun things. You knew most of it going, but here's like a fun one. Space Mountain. Don't forget, never eat right before going on Space Mountain. So very basic, but at the same time, if you are a Birnbaum's fan, adult or child, these have a different take on the history of the parks. I think they started in the mid 90s, and I have all the way up to 2003, and they kind of kept them going from there. But
Okay.
Autograph sections, scrapbook sections, it's like activity books. We got the anniversary edition, and these can be had for a better, cheaper deal than the classic Birnbaum's ones I've found.
There we go. That's cool, JT. A little piece of your childhood coming back.
Oh yeah.
Now, gentlemen, we know what it's like getting a reservation at Walt Disney World these days, right? It's 60 days if you got a reservation. Was it 30 days if you have a park reservation? I don't even remember if park reservations even a thing anymore. I'm literally have been out of it for the past year, so I'm not paying attention to any of that. Anyway, I just wanted to read you a little bit about Epcot dining. There were Epcot dining rules that did not apply to the rest of Walt Disney World, and I found these interesting. So, for dinner reservations must be made on the day of the meal at the World Key Information System screens at Earth Station, the building immediately past the waiting area. It says by early opening, there's also already a line with would-be reservation makers. It's usually developed, such as Alfredo's and Chef de France at a popular time like 7:30. And he says because nobody wants to wait in an unproductive line. I just love how genuine he's being here. He's like, arrive half hour early, and he said the preferred seating are usually booked by 10, so plan your evening meal with that in mind, and decide in advance where you want to eat and when, and choose a couple possible alternative dining reservation options. And he also says, don't arbitrarily dismiss the idea of an early seating. If you can get in, your lunch at 11 or a 5 p.m. dinner will not only be welcome, but more important, it will provide the opportunity to spend most of the pleasant, uncrowded evening hours enjoying Epcot, which that is one of my biggest tips. I think when we told the Japanese story, the Japan Pavilion, I told you the story that just going into the Japanese restaurant early and it then downpouring, and not that the rain has anything to do with coming early, but I love early dinners at Walt Disney World or much, much later.
Well, you're in luck because if you try
yes.
to make a dining reservation these days, generally your options are like, would you like to eat lunch at 10:45 a.m. or dinner at 4 p.m. or 9:30 at night? Like,
yeah, exactly. So, and then he says, if all else fails, if someone someone's holding a reservation does not show up, they only hold it for 15 minutes, it does not hurt to stop in and inquire about a table when passing a restaurant for which you have a sudden appetite. So, which I think is probably fair today, but the problem is that now you have a lot of walk-ins, way more than you did back then. I remember going down there with my grandparents in the early 90s, late 80s, and getting a little Amex guide. I remember calling up day of. I remember using World Key and booking something, and it was easy. You did it the day of. It was no big deal. It wasn't a competition, and you went and enjoyed your dinner, and it was as Birnbaum would say, fun times were had.
Let me ask you a question, Todd.
Yes.
Making these reservations, you're doing all this stuff down there. Was it easy to pay for things down there? Or was it a complex system where every place seemed to have kind of different rules on how you could pay for things?
Well, it's funny. I got tainted by my grandparents because they were convinced I would have all my money stolen, so they took me to the bank to get traveler's checks, so I went there with like $100 in traveler's checks. And I remember having to sign them over, but I do vaguely remember it being confusing. Like certain things wouldn't work at certain places. It wasn't like you just tap to pay like you do today. So what did you find, Brian?
Well, there's an entire page in 1983 explaining the intricacies of exchanging currency for goods and services.
And this is 93.
In Walt Disney World in 1983.
83, okay.
Now, it starts off by noting the American Express card as the official card of Walt Disney World can be used to pay for multi-day world passports.
I.e. the
cash
charge on the card for Disney is less than if you bought a Visa or MasterCard. That's what they're saying.
No, they wouldn't take Visa or MasterCard.
They wouldn't even take it. They're
for
like, we're not even.
buying
Oh, geez.
those passports. Listen, cash, traveler's checks, and personal checks are accepted as payment for all admission media. But the only way you could pay for, other than cash, obviously, the only card you could use for multi-day world passports was the American Express card. Now, a check, for those kids out there that don't know, it's a little piece of paper that we would write our amounts on and tell people how much we wanted to pay, and they would draw that money from our bank account within 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 business days.
And you trusted them not to write in extra zeros or numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Checks must bear the guest's name and address,
Fair.
be drawn on a United States bank,
Fair.
and be accompanied by the proper identification.
Okay.
Now, that identification is a valid driver's license and a current major credit card. Now, if you've watched National Lampoon's Vacation and he wants to cash that check at the Wild West town, he says he can cash it in 5 to 7 days, not without a major credit card.
Yep.
So that this was not abnormal policy. That's not just a movie thing. This was how it was done.
I
So you had a major driver's
too,
license and a major credit card such as Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Diners Club, or Carte Blanche. Fast food restaurants in the Magic Kingdom operate on a cash-only basis, so you had to pay cash at the quick service restaurants. For charges in sit-down restaurants and shops at the theme park, however, and all other charges throughout Walt Disney World, American Express and MasterCard credit cards are accepted. Not Visa, just MasterCard. Walt Disney World Resort guests may use the resort IDs that each member of a party receives upon check-in to cover purchases in shops, lounges, and restaurants, charges, and recreational fees incurred inside Walt Disney World, but outside the Magic Kingdom and Epcot Center. These cards are not valid for charges made past checkout time on the last day of the guest's stay. That is just the money. Then they have an option if you need to wire money.
Oh.
Friends and relatives from home, if you've run out of cash.
Or if you get an email from Kenyan Prince.
Well, not in 1983.
That's
you generally
true.
didn't get that, but you can send money to Walt Disney World guests through Western Union offices in the Contemporary Resort and Kissimmee and in Orlando, and they have the phone numbers for them. Now, here is a big section for you. It is beloved by older visitors, the Sun Bank. This institution, which has an old-fashioned branch on Main Street inside the Magic Kingdom and another in the Walt Disney World Shopping Village. And you'd walk down and one of those storefronts was an actual bank, a full-fledged bank that you could walk in and conduct your banking operations. Now, those banks could give cash advances on a MasterCard or a Visa with a $50 minimum and amounts as large as a guest credit limit permits. So if you had like a $6,000 credit limit, you could walk in there, hand them your Amex and say, can you give me $6,000? And they could do that.
There you go.
Cash and sell traveler's checks and provide refunds for lost American Express and Bank of America traveler's checks. You could cash personal checks of up to $1,000 for Amex card holders upon presentation of their cards, part payable in cash, and the rest in American Express traveler's checks. Though they don't tell you what the breakdown is. Now, I don't understand, Todd, why you couldn't just say, our policies, we give you 200 and then 800 in traveler's checks. Say, okay, now I want to just sign these and cash these traveler's checks.
A lot of times we just said that Seabass would pay for it.
Yeah, this is great. You could cash a personal check for up to $25 if you presented a driver's license and a major credit card. They would help you with wire transfers of money from a guest's own bank to the Sun Bank, and you could exchange foreign currency in there. And the branch was open from 9 to 4 daily on Main Street, USA, and in the village for the same hours on weekdays until 6 p.m. on Thursdays. And there was a drive-in teller window, I assume, down at the village, that was open from 8 to 6.
Well, it had to
There
be
is an
early because you had the pet in the car that you had to go pay cash for.
But you had to go pay cash to put
at the cow
store
can.
for the day, or a plant.
Yeah. That's right, I
Even
forgot
though
about
that
the
was
plant.
free, you might want to tip the guy to water the plant. So traveler's checks, even the most careful of vacationers occasionally loses a wallet in traveler's checks. I sound like Carl Malden right now. And the checks can take the sting out of the loss. Which type of traveler should buy is not so much a function of which is most easily refunded, because in the U.S. and in Walt Disney World, all major traveler's checks offers come through with emergency refunds in a pinch. I'm not going to read the whole section except to say that Sunbank handled them. They also, at American Express, Walt Disney World, American Express traveler's checks could be purchased at the Sunbank and the American Express card members' check dispensers. They were ATM machines that automatically vended traveler's checks when you feed them an American Express card and punch in your PIN number that's been obtained from the company in advance. Those machines were located in the Fiesta Fun Center at the Contemporary and the Sunbank opposite Walt Disney World Shopping Village. So you had an ATM that dispensed traveler's checks.
If anybody tells me that money is complicated at Walt Disney World now, that's not complicated. That's easy. Your tickets are complicated, and your tickets were easy back then.
Yeah, and then of course they exchanged foreign currency, which as I mentioned. But yeah, traveler's checks were a big deal for traveling, really, until credit cards became prominent. And when everybody kind of had credit cards and you could take your credit cards overseas, and more credit cards wouldn't charge you foreign transaction conversion fees and all, it just made less and less sense to use traveler's checks. You can just withdraw from an ATM over there in the local currency.
Right.
Usually without a fee attached to it. So, and those have all been more in the 2000s. That kind of stuff has become common. Before that, you'd go to, what's the name of that outfit that's always in all of the airports that exchanges money?
Global Exchange or something.
Thomas
Cook.
Thomas Cook, that's it. And you would walk up there with your $100 bill and say, "Can I exchange this for British pounds?" And you'd get 82 pounds or whatever in exchange for it, and they'd take their little 1 or 2% fee or whatever it was.
Yep.
And you'd land in the country at least with some local currency. They still have those in airports. I think.
No, they're still there because a lot of people. It's funny. Two little anecdotes is that when I went on my trip, European vacation with my brother in 1997, it was before the euro, so you could actually buy a currency pack at the start of the trip, and they'd give you, French francs and Swiss francs and German Deutschmarks and lira, and it was hilarious. You bought, and then it was $250
Greek drachmas.
Drachmas, yeah, you got
Greek
$75 in each country or the equivalent of, or whatever. I forget what it was, but that was interesting. But on my recent trip to Denmark, yes, still in all the international, the Thomas Cook and the currency exchange is still there. What's really interesting is that, countries outside of the U.S. and now find the U.S. is catching up. It's just there's so much tap to pay. I didn't need a single piece of cash for anything. The only time I need it was on my previous trip to Denmark earlier this year for work, where I wanted to buy something at a little roadside stand. It was the honor system, and they just wanted you to drop, 20 kroner in or something like that, and I had to borrow that from a coworker. But anyway.
Well, there's one more key tip.
Okay.
Before we move on from some of this planning. In 1983, there were hints for single travelers, and my favorite part of this is a very debonair Donald Duck dressed in a tuxedo with his top hat on, and of course no pants because he's a single traveler. And it says, Walt Disney World does not exactly attract the young, swinging singles crowd. So those on the lookout for romantic encounters probably would do better elsewhere. This is an official Disney guide, by the way. But solo travelers who travel alone for the kingdom or for the freedom and fun of it can have it as enjoyable a time as Walt Disney World as they would anywhere else. Now, Walt Disney World employees are generally a friendly lot and entertaining to talk to. chatting with a painter about the perpetual repainting of Main Street woodwork, or talking to the animal keepers at Discovery Island, a single traveler usually learns more about the ways of the world than any other group member. Other visitors might be encountered on the course of the day away from their own home base as well, and are apt to be just that much less standoffish. Single women will not find the bars and lounges in WDW hotels off limits, as they might in their real-world counterparts. Sitting at the U-shaped bar at the Baton Rouge Lounge, which was in the Empress Lily, can be particularly fun. Another good way to meet people, albeit a somewhat older crowd, is to sign up for one of Guest Relations' guided walking tours at the Magic Kingdom. And they have a number you can call for that. River Country, the hotel's swimming pools and beaches, and for those with the inclination, the Giraffe Disco at the Royal Plaza Hotel at Walt Disney World's Hotel Village Plaza are also good bets for meeting people. Now, before I finish this, can you imagine signing up for the guided walking tour and just approaching, a single lady you might be interested in and being like, hey there, groovy chick, you're really happening a far out kind of way.
You want to learn the history of Disney with me?
Yeah. Or at River Country. I understand you're sunning yourself in a tiny bikini right now. I hope this isn't awkward, but would you care to accompany me to the Giraffe Disco tonight? These are not good tips. A note for budget watchers: rates at all of the resorts and hotels, and it's some of the other Orlando area, are the same whether one or two people occupy the room. Similarly, the Walt Disney World villas are priced per unit, regardless of the number of people who stay there. This fact makes sharing accommodations an especially economical idea. Now, I really thought that was going to lead into a paragraph where we've seen those Love Boat episodes where they just have rando strangers sharing a room together.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, they booked a single rate, so they're put in a room with just a stranger.
Yep.
But thankfully, that is not where Steve Birnbaum led us to. He just said, hey, maybe bring a friend.
And if you're really of interest, you can order a oyster tower and a margarita pitcher.
It is something.
It is.
That's all I can say is it is something. On the subject of Steve Birnbaum, although the guide, Birnbaum's Guide, lived on, and Steve Birnbaum's photo graced the cover of the guide beginning in 1982 and continued to grace the cover of the guide, Steve Birnbaum passed away in 1991 at the age of 54 from leukemia. His second wife, Alexandra Mays Birnbaum, who shared his interest in travel and had been a travel partner and longtime co-editor of the guides, took over not only doing the Disney Guide, but continued to publish the Birnbaum Guides that run there. In fact, although he passed away in 1991, they kept Steve's photo on the cover through 1993. And then in 1994, it switched to the more familiar format that we were used to, where it's usually a photo of the Fab Five characters or something like that on the front, in front of the Magic Kingdom. And that was pretty much how it stuck. Mrs. Birnbaum kept the company for another 10 years after his passing. And in 2001, they did sell the Birnbaum's Guide nameplate and book service to Disney, which seems especially fortuitous for a lot of reasons. One, obviously she was, at the time he was 54 when he passed away, she would have been approaching retirement age by that point. But it was also right around that era when the internet and your ability to book your own airfare, your ability to book your own hotels, your ability to begin to do your own research. Todd, you published books. You also had a website.
Correct,
WDW Made Simple. There were a lot of Todd McCartneys out there putting sites together, kind of giving the ins and outs and really more up-to-date information than they could give in published books. So I don't know if that factored into her long-term thinking, but she sold the business to Disney. And as far as I know, they do continue to publish the annual guide. I don't think they use the Birnbaum name on it anymore. It's just the official guide to Walt Disney World, but we can double check that. I'm going to look right now while we're talking so we can edit this.
Mm-hmm.
It continues today to be called the Birnbaum's 2025 Guide to Walt Disney World.
Look at that.
So they continue to use the Birnbaum nameplate, which is good because it's obviously well known.
Well, also, too, I think our generation still understands it, right? You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
still recognize it. It's a recognizable name, and it feels good. It's like, oh, that's reputable. It's honest. I will say, as the guide has become more and more Disney-eyed, there's more IP in it. I think the charm about the original books, and this may seem weird, is it was printed on a matte paper that felt very nice to the hands. And they did that for a few years, but the latest guides have gone to more of a glossy feel and a glossy paper. I am personally not one for glossy. I'm personally not one who likes glossy paint, who likes cold. I like warm feelings, and I think it took away a little bit for me. There's probably people who can write in and say I agree, or might be yelling at me. But I don't know. I think the old book was a little warmer. It has definitely been Disney-fied by them taking it over. But it's understandable.
I'll say two things about it. First, when JT was mentioning the books for kids, it became common practice for me when one of my nieces and nephews, once one of my family members was planning to take their kids to Disney, or one of my friends, I would usually, before the trip, that would be a present for me, as I would wrap up Disney World Guide for Kids, whatever that year's edition was, and give it to them so they could kind of... And they, a lot of times, became quasi-planners for the trip. Like, they knew what they wanted to do.
Better than the adults did, right?
Well, based on what they read.
Sure.
They knew the stuff they really wanted to see. And I always got a kick out of them asking Uncle Brian, like, tell me about Space Mountain, or do you think I can do this? Or should I, And I used to have tips and things for people. Anytime anybody asks now, I just tell them use a travel agent, because it's all become so complex. I don't know the ins and outs anymore. But I think what happened in the 2000s is Disney took over publication, is like everything else, like my calendars that I stopped buying in the early 2000s. I don't collect the later. Everything is just it's basically press release documents now.
Right.
There is no critique in there. There is no, hey, maybe you should skip this. Everything is the greatest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Sugar-coated.
Yes.
It's like watching the Easter parade now. You know what I mean? And all that stuff. It's just...
Well, those are just concerts.
Oh, you know what I mean.
But the Christmas parade and all are now performances with a little tiny bit of the parks sprinkled in. But yeah, there's these
They're sweet
features.
and perfect.
Yeah.
And I agree. It drives me bonkers as well. So it's just not what I want to see and not what I remember too.
So here's to you, Steve Birnbaums, and everybody. By the way, there was an outfit. I don't know if they still publish it, but there was a Walt Disney World for Adults, which was done by a competitor.
Oh, yeah.
That was an unofficial one.
The unofficial guide to Walt Disney World too was another one.
Yeah. So there have been others that have competed with Birnbaum. But these guides, for any of you who were 80s and 90s travelers, especially in early 2000s, I think they hold a special place in our hearts. And
it is a book that, I will never get rid of my 1986 edition. You're gonna have to pry it from my hands at some point in my life. So
I will mention that this 83 edition, which was the first one that had Epcot in it, including new Epcot Center, it says across the scroll on the front. The Epcot section, because obviously it was published in 1982, is extremely brief.
Oh, really?
I mean, they do cover it, but it's I can tell you, it goes from page 118 backwards to 103. So there's 16 pages, covers all of Epcot Center, because it just, they were going off of what was going to be there, not necessarily having experienced any of it. The following year, the 84 guide has obviously much more extensive sections on it.
I will say, if you remember Walt Disney World from a certain time period, and if you don't have one of the Birnbaum books, I can't recommend enough that you go get a copy of the year that you remember the fondest in your life of visiting Walt Disney World. As I mentioned earlier, the 1986 edition is what I remember. It was the first trip down there that resonated with me as a what was I? I was 12 years old at the time. Like I said, to this day, it's my go-to read. I have trouble picking up the 89 version because it's not what as much as I went in 89, 86 was the one that resonated. Go buy the book, find them on eBay. You're going to go back in time and you're going to get those feel-good moments. You're going to remember things. You're going to read things that you probably forgot about. And, they really become part of your personal history when visiting Walt Disney World. And I think they're, for any real serious Disney World fan, you're going to have one or two of these in your library. And I can't recommend enough. So you can play the sappy, sad music now, but that's the way I feel. Was that Emmy Award winning? Do I get something for that? Was it pretty good?
The back of this is like there's a whole section at the end on things to do off property. Mm-hmm. Restaurants, like pages of restaurants, and
do they still do that in the guide?
Balloon trip? No, I don't think. I mean, obviously not in the official guide anymore. That's done by them, but all of the attractions like Wet and Wild and the Stars Hall of Fame and SeaWorld and all, like they're all back here. The Mystery Fun House, and then where to eat, and there's just a ton of restaurants that are, some of which I've been to, La Cantina and Lee and Rick's Oyster Bar, which are still there. Yeah. Some of these are still there. And then the last 2 pages are nightlife. And there's a whole section on Church Street Station here. Like, just like if you want a snapshot, go pick one of these up from the 80s, pick one up from the 90s, and just kind of flip through them for, it's like a, it's like Biff stealing the sports almanac.
There you go. Exactly. And it's honest. It feels honest. It feels truthful. Until the later years. So yeah, I can't recommend. I think we need, I know Hal is not here tonight, but I think we need a t-shirt of like Birnbaum's, travel team 86 or something like that. I don't know. He'll be better off coming up with something, but we need something to honor Mr. Birnbaum and all you Birnbaum lovers out there. So. But
we're open to suggestions.
Yeah, send them in. It would be great.
And the promised episode we were going to do on music, right?
Yeah, Epcot music. Yep.
Epcot music. We'll get back to next month when Hal has a functioning home and recording studio to work from. So that's coming.
All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been I really looked forward to this episode, Brian. When you suggested, I was like, this is perfect. It's what
it was actually a listener who suggested it. Was
there we go.
Tweeted at us a couple of days ago and said, "Hey, you guys should do an episode on this." And since we lost Hal and the ability to do the music episode, I said, "Oh, that's perfect."
Yeah, it was great. So thanks to all of our listeners out there. As always, if you can give us a review on iTunes or wherever your favorite podcast app is. If you would like to donate, you can go to lbvhistory.org/donate. And as always, all of our great t-shirts that How designs and everything are available on retrowdw.com/support us. So until next month, when we'll try to get Hal back into the studio here and get him all set up for the Epcot music episode. Thank you very much for listening. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Kujar on Twitter at LS1JT and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities. Don't leave home without them.